Tonight we continue our series of interviews with candidates for Boston City Council in the preliminary election Tuesday, September 24th. Our guest is one of the candidates running at large. We'd like to welcome Martin Keogh. Thank you very much for being with us, Martin.
Chris, thank you for having me.
I want to introduce you to voters who don't know you already. You have an interesting story that goes from being a dropout to a lawyer. How did that happen?
Well, during the turbulence of the late 70s, early 80s with the busing, a lot of things happening at my house there. My grades started to get down, started to get into a lot of fights at high school, and my guidance counselor, I think I might have told you this story a few years back, Mr. Craven suggested, he said, you're 17, you can leave school, you're the legal age to go, why don't you go to Bunker Hill Community College or one of those colleges like that? And I heard him say, you're 17 and you can leave school, and I was out the door. Within 3 or 4 months, my mother came into my room one morning and she said, if you don't go back to school, then you're going to be out of the house. So I enrolled at Boston College at nighttime. I had a few little brushes with the law that I'm not proud of, but it made me who I am. And I decided at some point in my life, during when I was going to BC, that I wanted to be a lawyer and help kids like me that got into trouble and deserved a second chance. So that's how that all happened. I've been doing that for 20 years now.
Now, of course, I heard you talk about busing at one of the recent forums, and I guess the line here is basically, let's spend less money on that at least and spend it on other things in the schools. Is it as easy as that? No,
it's not, because a lot of the school department budget is geared towards transportation for students from across the city, including special ed kids. You can't, I think it's mandated by federal law.
And charter schools and Catholic schools too.
The charter schools I have a little bit of a problem with. They do produce great results, but they're taking money from the Boston public schools who need it desperately to continue the programs for the kids that are in the schools. So I'm not a big fan of the charter schools. I don't think they're a bad idea either.
What about after-school programs? Because you've talked about that in your campaign.
Yeah, it drives me crazy. So, you know, we talk about kids that are at risk, kids who need intervention. I think that we direct a lot of money towards different places where it doesn't need to go, when it should be directed towards the kids. For after-school programs, even pre-training programs, jobs like that. Even creating a high school that's trades only for the kid like myself that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I was 16 or 17 years old. And had they said, we had shop in Hyde Park High School, but it was just a course, it wasn't a whole school. But had they put money into a school, even nowadays, like for electrical, like get the IBEW 103, the greatest guys in the world, you got them involved with the school, you're you're starting a school full of apprentices for kids who just don't know what they want to do with their lives yet.
You do legal work in a field that a lot of people in the neighborhoods are talking about these days, and that's got to do with property development, getting city approvals. Now you've seen the news. We have a former official who's pleaded guilty to bribery. What do you think should be done about things like that?
First thing I have to say is John Lynch. I met him about 30 years ago. Very nice guy. Was shocked that it happened. And the legal course, you have to see where it goes on. He pled guilty to whatever that charge was. I think what needs to happen, and particularly by going with the community groups in the neighborhood, there's got to be more transparency on the zoning board. The chairwoman, Christina Rajo, does an excellent job. She's very, very good. All those members do a great job. But I think what the neighborhoods are looking for is they want someone on the board that is going to be pro-neighborhood, and they don't think they're getting it. I go up on the board. I see what they do. I think they're doing a good job. I think there has to be some sort of another process where you select people who get appointed to that board.
Of course, the thing that I hear from some of the neighborhood groups around the city is that whenever they have input, it's not always taken seriously. You know, you've seen the other side of this maybe, so what do you think?
It's happening across the city, in Hyde Park, in West Roxbury, over in Alston Bright. They want to develop a big green piece of land and I don't think it's going to happen, but it just seems like that the neighborhoods aren't being heard at the zoning board, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily in favor of the developers, but it seems like the developers are getting their way. I think the developers need to be reeled in, because they don't care about the neighborhoods. They just care about making a buck, and they don't care about who lives in the neighborhoods at all. You know.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Martin Keogh, candidate for City Councilor at Large. Martin, one thing you have a problem with is charging people a nickel for a bag at the supermarket. Explain that.
Okay, so a few years ago they started. The plastic bags, I agree. I used to see them in my tree in my backyard. They'd be in there, it drive me crazy. The city council put forward a law to get rid of the plastic bags. Now, that was a step in the right direction. What I didn't like about it, what everybody I talked to, particularly people who are a little bit older than me and people who are on fixed incomes, is that nickel they pay for the bag, it drives them bananas. I will tell you that when I go to Star Market or Roach in Roach Brothers in West Roxbury, and I always forget my bag when I go in there, and I pay that nickel for the brown bag, and I say to myself, they're punishing me for getting my bag. Why don't they reward me for give me a nickel for every time I bring in a recyclable bag? And that might inspire me as well. But the thing I thought that was resonating when I was getting my signatures to get on the ballot, especially with the elderly, they don't like paying the nickel. The nickel adds up. At the end of the year, it could be a couple $100s that they could use towards rent, because rents are high, towards groceries, towards bills, towards medicines. So if I get elected, what I plan on doing is repealing that portion of the law that you charge 5 cents to somebody who forgets a bag. People shouldn't be punished for forgetting their recyclable bags.
Yeah. What about transportation problems? Any that you see yourself giving a lot of attention to?
All right. My kids are the number one reason why I'm running. The two major issues across the city are transportation and overdevelopment, and they go hand in hand. Down at Forest Hills, for example, I don't even know how many units they're building there, but it's this big, massive structure where a parking lot used to be. So now all of those cars that parked there, they're gone. Now we've got a building with no parking, not enough parking for those people. I think that the solution to the transportation problem is if you have a baseball team, for example, John Farrell brought the Red Sox to the World Series. 2 years later, he was gone because his team was working out. So they can't get rid of the team, they get rid of the head person. Maybe it's time to get rid of the top person at the Department of Transportation for the state and replace them with Michelle Wu, because she's got great ideas. And we'll take her out of the race, too.
Now, speaking of her ideas, one of them that's a little more controversial maybe is to charge people for resident parking stickers.
100% against that. So I've got one pickup truck. It's a Ford F-150. It's a 2004. It costs me, it's free for the resident parking sticker. If I've got to pay $25, I don't think that's fair, because I'm paying about $6,000 a year in taxes. I'm paying sales tax. I'm paying that nickel tax for the bag. I'm getting taxed and feed everywhere. I'm getting nickeled and dimed everywhere. If I get on the council, I will make sure that that doesn't pass, because there are a lot of families out there that shouldn't have to pay for parking in front of their own house.
Public safety, what's the most pressing issue right now?
Well, first of all, the Boston police need to be supported by the city council and this mayor 100%. The parade a few weeks back, while many people didn't agree with the message that this parade brought, they still had their First Amendment right to free speech.
I got to hold you.
Yeah.
This parade is a pressing. I mean, there are people who live in bullets flying past them. Is that the most pressing issue?
No. But the thing is, it's a disrespect that the police get. I felt like the police are under attack, and I'm going to be a pro-police guy. First of all, I'd like to hire at least 1,000 more officers over the next 5 years, in addition to the officers we have to get for officers that retire. And I'd like to see the police continue with the model under Willie Gross, which is the community policing. I think it's very effective that a cop who comes into a neighborhood and talks to a kid is probably going to steer him in the right direction. And I'll tell you, when I was a kid, getting in all fights and everything in the neighborhood, there were 2 police officers in my life that got involved with me. They were friends of my brother, and they pretty much said, this is what you should do, whatever. Yeah, and my parents got divorced. This is a long story with me, but my parents getting divorced, I didn't really have a father figure at home all the time, and my mother had, I've got 3 brothers and 3 sisters. So these 2 police officers, I'd have to say, were very instrumental in changing my life. I think that the police can do the same thing with the kids in the communities today, as well as in the schools.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Oh, thank you very much.
Martin Keogh, candidate for Boston City
Number 5 on
Council.
the ballot, Chris.
Candidate for City Councilor at Large. In a moment, encouraging families to set their sights on higher education. We'll hear about the expansion of a program to help with savings. But first, this message.